Welcome back to the Dan Cofall Show, 877-326-3255. DanCofall.com is the website. Nice to have you folks on board. With us, we have Ambassador Tony Garza, and we only have the pleasure of his company for a relatively short time. I want to get right to it. Ambassador Garza, former ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Mexico from, 2002 through 2009, Texas-born, former Secretary of State of Texas, and former chairman of the Texas Railroad Commission. Mr. Ambassador, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you doing?
I am great, my friend. These are interesting times for immigration, especially for border states. I have to ask, there are people that feel strongly on both sides. What is your opinion of the Senate bill that they have proposed to the House right now?
Listen. I'm generally very supportive of what the Gang of Eight, the so-called Gang of Eight, has done in terms of moving us towards some comprehensive immigration reform. Something that, quite frankly, Dan, I think is long overdue. And so I guess.
What can I, Mr. Ambassador? Can I ask a question? What does comprehensive? What does comprehensive mean? Because when I hear comprehensive, there are laws on the books now that says that illegal immigrants who are foreign felons, they've crossed into the country illegally. The laws are very simple: you catch them and you return them. And employers are not supposed to employ them. Aren't those laws simple enough? Why do we need more reform?
Well, I think what comprehensive implies to me is, listen, we're gonna deal with the reality of 12 million people living currently in our country without documents or illegally. And we're going to address the fact that many of them have found their way into our workforce.
Well, they didn't find their way. They loped into our workforce.
Assimilated. Excuse me?
They loped across the border, and I got to be very clear on this one.
You might say elope, but they were also drawn into our workforce by employers that were willing to employ them. And so I think what we have to address is the fact that there have been employers that have been willing to employ, willing employers. There have been people that crossed over to essentially take advantage of a situation within our economy when it was expanding, have had children, are living in our country, and quite frankly, we're not going to deport them. And so to me, comprehensive says, how do you address the 11 million people currently in our economy and at the same time secure the border? That's comprehensive. I think it doesn't make anybody completely happy, but it addresses both sides of the equation, the needs of our economy. At the same time, the desire, I think, by most Americans to have a secure border. That's what comprehensive means. I mean, deal with both sides of the equation in a realistic way that addresses the reality of the country today and secures our border.
That's what they told Reagan in the 80s, and it wasn't true. Let's say he said, let's give 3,000 people citizenship, and then we'll fix the borders. And it wasn't true then, isn't true now. I've been a guest of the Border Patrol down in El Paso. I've been up and down the border. I know that fence, when you look at that, the fence that they take you to is a very, very good fence. But you can walk 5 feet and walk right around that fence when it stops. Yeah. There's no country in the world that has borders as porous as we do. Countries without borders are not countries. We have a military to go out and break other people's borders.
Yeah. There's no country in the world that's as attractive as ours either, and I think that's one of the beauties of the United States. And at the same time, if you look at the flows of people today, certainly from Mexico, the country that I served, and it's essentially a net zero, and that has a lot to do.
What does that mean, Mr. Ambassador? What's a net zero?
Net zero in terms of people flowing from Mexico to the United States without documents. You have a very different economic profile. The more Mexicans are staying home to work as the economy expands and a larger middle class is being created. And in the last handful of years, our economy has not grown as quickly as it did in the early to mid 2000s.
Hey, here's a simple question. I can't cross the border.
Practical matter, the flows are not what they were even a handful of years ago.
I can't cross the border into Mexico, Mr. Ambassador. Why? If I do that, they will shoot me or they will lock me up. Why is it okay for people? By the way, this is not hang on a second, Mr. Ambassador. This is not anything against the people that want a better life. Everybody wants a better life.
And I realize that. Where we started this conversation was on the need for comprehensive immigration reform, and the truth is, we have, I guess by some count, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 million people without documents in our country or illegally. Let's get our arms around that. Let's at least get a very clear sense of who's in our country. Let's provide a document so they can find their work themselves into our assimilate and become part of our country, and at the same time secure our border.
Did you see the latest UN study? Did you see the latest UN study that says that our southern border with Mexico has now turned into the greatest conduit for illegal immigrants? Hold it for a moment. From Africa. Have we seen that yet? And what we're talking about is a porous border that is not just Hispanics in Mexico looking for a better life. It is people from all over the world.
Well, Dan, that's the essence of comprehensive. Secure the border. I mean,
but they're not going to secure the border. They're not going to build the fence out. They're not going to put they're not going to put people on the border to keep people from crossing over. They're not going to do any of that. And those laws are on the books right now.
Dan, that's part of the Senate bill. I mean, is give the enforcement along the border, give them the resources to do the job that we expect them to do.
Well, then why don't we just give them? Why don't we give border enforcement those tools right now? Why don't we give them the money right now to do their job right now? Why do I need more laws? Why don't I just give the money that we promised that we would give to Border Patrol 20 years ago? Why do we need to include immigration reform along with this?
Look, 20 years ago, had we addressed the employer sanctions, we might not be in the situation that we are now. But we are in the situation that we have to deal with. We've got a large group of people in our country that contrite significantly to the economic health and well-being.
Bull crap. Horse crap, Mr. Ambassador.
In terms of Oh, come on, Dan. Listen, in terms of job generation, contribution to the deficit, in terms of creation of small businesses.
Stop, Mr. Ambassador. Hang on a second.
The growth and expansion of our economy.
Illegal immigrants do
the case, and it's the case today. And whether they are legal or illegal, the contributions to our economy are real. So, as a practical matter, we've got 11 million people in our country. We're not going to deport them. How are we going to get a sense of who's in our country and how they're going to be assimilate into part of the American mainstream? And that's what comprehensive immigration reform is about. At the same time, addressing the security that we so badly need along the border.
Horse-hooey talking points, Mr. Ambassador, and you're better than that, my friend. This is nothing more than talking points.
Those are not horse-hooey talking points. You're reacting very shut the border down. What would that accomplish? You shut it down, you still have 11 million people within the United States that you're not going to deport. What's your response to that?
To the 11 million people I'm not going to deport. Deport them.
How in the world are you?
Hold on, and Mr. Ambassador, this is the easiest thing in the world to do. The problem is, you and I both know who the sponsors of this bill are. You have big business that is the sponsor of this because they want cheap labor. That cheap labor, because of Obamacare and the cheap labor that will come that is already here, will take jobs away from middle class Americans right now. There is no disputing that. The very fact that somebody is telling us that this is going to be good for our economy is wrong.
Medium-sized business, they employ people. I want to see Americans working. And
so we're going to let illegal immigrants come across the border and start a business to hire Americans? Is that what you're telling me, Mr. Ambassador?
Look. If you look at for example, immigrants aren't just at the low end of the workforce. Immigrants also are driving entrepreneurship, driving innovation. If you look at the
horse-hooey,
the tech sector,
horse-hooey
that has driven job generation this last decade, a lot of those are immigrants.
I'm using Texas language for us both, Mr. Ambassador. Horse-hooey. The drain on this economy from illegal immigration. Once you count medical, once you count enforcement, once you count food stamps, we're sending food stamps to Mexico, Mr. Ambassador. Why are we doing that?
It is not a net drain. in terms of the overall
Our
growth
CBO has said it's a net
health
drain.
of our economy. No, our CBO has said over the next 20 years, it would actually result in a reduction of our deficit.
No, sir, they did not. What they said was if all these fees are paid and all these taxes are paid.
Given the demographics, so the complementary demographics of our two countries, it would actually help us move programs such as Social Security towards a sounder economic footing. There's a lot to be said for the immigrant, Dan. And
no, you don't get it. You don't get to drop that. Hold on. The world, everybody's parents were immigrants from somewhere. You don't get a chance to make me out to be anti-immigrant, which I am clearly
not. I'm not making you out to be anti-immigrant. I'm just saying.
But no country in the world would let me into their country as a citizen or to stay past my visa limits unless I brought cash with me and I was a value to that society. We are making no judgments against who comes across the border as whether or not you'll be of value to this society.
That's essentially what the Gang of Eight bill is about.
Oh, the Gang of Eight, they're idiots.
We're going to get a good chance. We're going to get a criminal backgrounds. They're going to pay a fine.
No, you're not. They've already stopped doing backgrounds.
10-year period of time. It's 13 years towards you're on any.
Will you come back
on any realistic path,
Mr. Ambassador? Will you come back?
I'd be happy to.
Will you come back? No, hold on a second. I don't want you to go until you have to. Would you come back a year from now and defend these points now? Because I'll tell you what's going to happen. The Democrats and the Republicans are going to make an argument saying there can't be two classes of citizens in this country. Therefore, we can't have people waiting 10 years to become citizens. We're going to make them citizens now. We can't have people that are not eligible. We're not eligible for Obamacare. We're going to make them all eligible for Obamacare.
You bet. I'd love to come back in a year and look back at a responsible leadership on the part of the Senate and House where we did have comprehensive immigration reform.
Why didn't we do it already, Mr. Ambassador? Why do we need new laws? Why don't we just fund the ones we have? And I'll ask you this. Why don't we just do one thing? I can write an immigration policy in one sentence. Whatever your immigration policy is, any other country, we have the same policy. Therefore, if I want to go to Switzerland, if I want to go to Germany, I want to go to Australia, I want to go to Mexico, I can do it. But the problem is I can't do that now because they know the dangers of unchecked immigration. Every country does except for us.
That's not the kind of country we are, and we've got 11 million people in our country.
And we've got $17 trillion worth of debt.
Of who they are, why they're there, and move them into the mainstream of America. That's what we do in the United States.
Move them into vans and ask them to go home.
That's why we're the country we are.
We are broke. We've been broke since the 70s. We don't have any money to support this.
We are the greatest country on the face of the earth, and the immigrant is a large part of the reason why.
Oh, my gosh, Mr. Ambassador, you should be running for president, my friend. At least I know you have the gift of gab. You are from the wonderful state of Texas. You are a good sport for this, my friend. I'm so animated because I know our audience. I know the voice out there of the American people. The Gang of Eight does not represent America. The Gang of Eight does not represent the interest of American people. And once the average American worker is
Americans,
hang on a second. Once they're exposed to the number of jobs that will be lost in Middle America because of this converting foreign felons into a pathway to citizenship. These are foreign felons.
No. Now you're mischaracterizing.
No, I'm not. I know exactly. Hang on.
I'm talking about foreign felons.
Hold on, brother.
And that's nonsense. And to use that type of over-the-top characterization is just plain demagoguery.
Isn't it so?
The lowest common denominator and the visceral instincts of people that should know better. And you know better.
Here's my question, my friend. Understand the reason.
Felons are not going to qualify for the path to anything under any bill.
Hold on. Hang on. No soapboxing here.
Now that's horse hooey.
All right. Foreign felons is my term, and here's the reason for that. If anybody crossed into America illegally, they are a felon. They are not Americans. Therefore, they're foreign. They are foreign felons. I'm not saying that they have committed a felony in their own country. I'm saying by coming into this country illegally, they have made themselves felons. They are foreigners. They are foreign felons. But if we called them foreign felons, Americans would go, well, I don't want foreign felons in my country, but an undocumented worker, well, let's just give them some documents. This is the biggest snow job played on Americans in the last 10 years. This is a travesty. If the country is broke now, it will be more broke every day that goes by if an immigration reform goes through. But the problem is, now that we've set up this straw dog, if we don't give immigration reform, then we will be seen as this horrible country. We'll have race wars. We'll have very bad things in this country if we don't pass immigration reform.
It's not a straw dog. It's just dealing with the economic realities of where we are in America today.
Where do you live, Mr. Ambassador?
And that's
Where do you live in this country?
Texas.
Do you really? And you live, and you're going to be happy with the economy the way it's going to be. You're going to be happy with middle class Americans not having an equal footing to fight for jobs.
Middle class Americans will always have an equal footing.
They don't now.
Anybody that wants to work hard and aspires to more in the United States will always have that opportunity.
They don't now, Mr. Ambassador.
The history of yes, we do. We are all middle class. And as long as you're willing to work hard...
Who's building my fence, Mr. Ambassador? Who's cutting my yard, Mr. Ambassador? Who is building the buildings in Texas, Mr. Ambassador? Are you telling me that only illegal immigrants and Hispanic labor will take those jobs? They'll take them because...
No, of course I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you there's a lot of people that want those jobs, and a lot of them are being done by folks without documents because they are being employed. There are employers that need that labor. There are many jobs that would go unfilled without that labor.
Yes, and yes to the first part, no to the last part. There are people that will fill those jobs. The problem is we have a safety net, and that safety net is catching not only the foreign felons that are coming across the border, but it's also catching Americans that are displaced by these foreign felons. So here's the problem: in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, the massive wave of immigration in this country, immigrants came over here. They were either productive and contributed, or they died because there were no safety nets. Now we keep people alive because of safety nets, so the taxpayers, the remaining taxpayers in this country, have to work harder to provide a safety net for people to come across this border that didn't bring their own capital, didn't bring their own education, and didn't bring their own skill sets.
Listen, and those safety nets will be made stronger by the
with my tax dollars
flow of people into the workforce.
Mr. Ambassador,
because they will contribute, they will pay taxes, they will become part of the fabric, and that safety net ultimately will be stronger. That is the history of America.
You're a good man, Mr. Ambassador.
It's no different, and it will be no different now.
And I'd love the opportunity to meet you sometime. I'd be happy to have you back on the show at any point in time. Right. I hope that I hope common sense prevails in this immigration debate, and that we do not sell our country wholesale when there is no need to on either the buyer's part or the seller's part. Enforce the laws we've got now. Fund the laws we've got now. Don't let employers hire illegal immigrants. Your problem is solved. People go away when there's no revenue stream.
Dan, I hear the snoring.
All right, my friend. God bless you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Likewise, buddy.
All right, you take care.
Afternoon.
We'll be right back.